teacher for generations, Aneita Fern.
Well, hello there, Christopher again with another in our series of Fireside Chats. This time we're at the modern end of Aneita Fern, next to our mid-century modern fireplace designed by our architect Ann Abernathy in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright. This kind of double-stacked fireplace that you see here is reminiscent of fireplaces that Wright would have designed later in his career in the 40s and 50s. All the brick here is actually brick from that era that we found in a Dallas-Fort Worth brickyard. It's brick that has not been manufactured since the 50s. They had a bunch of it because builders don't really use it anymore, and we're only too happy to give this excess Roman brick to us. And it makes for quite a stunning display, I think. Today, we're going to be concentrating a little bit more about the Frank Lloyd Wright influences on Aneita Fern. I've always been a huge fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, and when we first designed the store, I told our architect that I wanted the whole experience of Aneita Fern to evoke Frank Lloyd Wright. And for those of you who've been in the store or who have looked on the website to see some of the photos, I think you can probably tell where all of that has come from. Frank Lloyd Wright, as an architect, practiced mainly in the Midwest. He did a lot of things on the East Coast, was prolific out on the West Coast, and then settled in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he has his Taliesin West. Texas was not really a part of his stomping ground, although Dallas was the beneficiary of three very distinct and unique projects, one that didn't ever make it off the ground. First, we have a private residence that's still standing at 9400 Rockbrook in the Preston Hollow area, and that was completed in 1958. There was also a unique relationship between Frank Lloyd Wright and Stanley Marcus of Neiman Marcus fame. He actually commissioned Wright to build his home here in Dallas. The two never got along, and the home was never built, though the plans still exist. And then, of course, most famously, we have the Kalita Humphreys Theater, the former Dallas Theater Center off Turtle Creek in Dallas. Still a public space, still a place you can go see Wright in all his elegance, one of the last buildings that he produced before he died. And it was being built around the same time the Guggenheim was being constructed in New York, and the two bear a little resemblance. There's also another piece of Frank Lloyd Wright history and Kalita Humphreys history that we have here at Aneita Fern, and it is an old theater chair. Let's take a look. Here's what I was talking about. An original Kalita Humphreys Theater chair that Frank Lloyd Wright designed in the late 50s for the Dallas Theater Center. Now, this chair looks a little bit different than it did back in Wright's day. The chair itself was purchased at an auction that the Theater Center had a decade or so ago. They actually had removed all of the seating, I believe, back in the 80s and replaced them. And Frank Lloyd Wright's original chairs were just sitting in a warehouse, and the theater decided to clean it all out and let everyone buy a piece of history. So we did. This chair was cleaned up and new fabric put on the chair. This is not the original paint and not the original color scheme that Wright would have used, but it is now more of a curiosity than anything else. Actually, it's a functioning chair. It has a number on it, and the seat does move. A testament to Wright's brilliance of design. It has that space-age Jetsons feel to it, I think. A lot of them are still out there. There were some people that used them for home theaters, I think, when they purchased them about 10 years or so ago. And we're pleased to have two of them at Aneita Fern. How do they sit? Well, pretty good if you're about my size, but Kalita Humphreys Theater in downtown Dallas is still a place that you'd like to visit. And if you'd like to take a road trip with me, let's go there. And we are back now on location in downtown Dallas next to the Kalita Humphreys Theater, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright in 1959. A really incredible piece of architecture for Dallas. And we're joined for our first on-location fireside chat by Dallas-based architect Ann Abernathy. Ann designed Aneita Fern in the style of Frank Lloyd Wright. We'll be talking a little bit about that. It's also nice to be outside on this gorgeous day, and we had 1.5 feet of snow about a week ago. Now 60 degrees degrees and sun, so quite different to be here on location with you. A little bit about Ann. In addition to designing Aneita Fern, Ann also worked as a restoration architect for the Frank Lloyd Wright home and studio in Oak Park, Illinois in the late 80s, one of several architects who are working on that project. And Ann, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the Kalita Humphreys Theater and the significance of having this type of a building designed by Frank Lloyd Wright in Dallas.
Well, Dallas is very fortunate that this building was constructed here. Wright had been formulating his idea for a theater for about 40 years, and he had looked at other sites, at other clients, but they never came to fruition. But here in Dallas, finally, this concept was built. However, his concept was melded with the concepts of Paul Baker, the original founding director, to create a very new experimental theater design, unlike anything else here or anywhere in the world, actually. And it's really the only theater that Wright fully designed that was constructed before his death, and the drawing stamped by Wright. So it's a very special, unique building.
And we share somewhat of a connection to the Guggenheim in New York, don't we? Because weren't both of those buildings either under construction or in design process at the same time?
Yes, they were on the drawing boards at the same time, and there are a lot of parallels to the Guggenheim. A fairly circumscribed site, vertical building with reinforced concrete and curbs. However, this building is cylindrical form set in a diamond grid, where the Guggenheim is cylindrical forms in a rectangular grid.
Well, let's switch gears just a moment and talk about the design of Aneita Fern. When I first hired you to become the architect for our store, I had mentioned my love of Frank Lloyd Wright in architecture, and we wanted to emulate some of his design. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts in designing Aneita Fern and some of the elements that evoke Wright at the store.
Well, of course, Aneita Fern is very different than this building. This building is a closed container that holds an auditorium that needs to be separated from the outside acoustically and visually. Whereas at the Aneita Fern, it's in a strip commercial center, and we want people to be able to look in and see everything that's in the store and be encouraged to move in and through the store. So with that in mind, the exterior of Aneita Fern has some similarities to the Kalita Humphreys Theater in that it's kind of an interplay of strong verticals and horizontals, which you can see here at the theater. The Kalita Humphreys Theater has the tall form that is actually the fly loft of the stage, surrounded by horizontal forms that are outdoor terraces. At Aneita Fern, there's a strong vertical that you can kind of see from a distance, and then a series of ledges that you enter under. The difference is that here you're surrounded by a beautiful landscape, and the experience of moving into the store happens gradually, whereas at Aneita Fern, the experience of moving into the store happens in about 4 feet. And so then you're immediately within the interior space.
And some of the things we can look at here as we're looking at the building, you can see some similarities here. Obviously, the butt glazing that they use, and also striking is the door handles, which that's a very prominent design feature of Aneita Fern too, or
yes,
the large copper door handles that we have. So.
Well, and interestingly enough, Wright believed that there was an idea or concept that was a unifying theme to architecture. And so the diamond grid appears in the Kalita Humphreys Theater in plan, in section, and in details. This is a very plain, almost austere building, but the decorative features such as the columns and the ribbon windows all reflect the geometry of that grid, and so do those door pulls. And at Aneita Fern, it's the same thing. The door pulls are reflecting the jogging rectilinear pattern that you find in your store.
Well, let's take a moment and actually go inside to the lobby of the Kalita Humphreys Theater, where Ann can take us on a little bit more of a tour and explain more on the theater and the layout.